Okay, let's talk about simplifying square roots. And this is absolutely a must know skill in order for you to pass algebra. And you can kind of think of this as simplifying or reducing a fraction. So, for example, if you had the fraction 30 over 60, we wouldn't leave our answer that way. Most of you would say, oh, no, we can just reduce this fraction to 1/2. So in mathematics, we want to fully simplify expressions. Now, obviously, with reducing fractions, there's a whole kind of procedure there to write the fraction in its simplest form. But the same is true with square roots, and you have to know how to do this in algebra. Okay, this is critical. It's not that difficult, but again, we're going to start with a nice, basic, easy problem. Then we'll do a few other additional practice problems because we want to make sure you understand this skill. Okay, you're definitely going to run into square roots, and we call this a radical as well. So as you progress in your algebra studies, you got to know how to deal with these guys. So not that difficult, and we're going to clear up any confusion that you might have in just 1 second. But first, let me go ahead and quickly introduce myself. My name is John. I'm the founder of TabletClass Math. I'm also a middle and high school math teacher, and over several years, I've constructed what I like to believe is one of the best online math help programs there is. Of course, I'll let you be the judge of that. If you're interested, you can check out my math help program by following the link in the description of this video. Now, basically, my math help program is 100 plus different math courses. Okay, so I have all the big courses like pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2. I'm going to be launching my pre-calculus course, which is exciting because I've been working for years on that. When I teach a course, I really teach it comprehensively. I mean, I don't do little quick tutorials. I mean, you're getting the real deal type of, you're getting a full course experience. Okay, a huge amount of lessons, and I teach you how to solve thousands of problems within these courses. So, if you're interested in my courses, obviously just go to my site and check out my course catalog. But I do a lot in specialty courses, especially in the area of test preparation. So for those of you out there studying for like the GED, SAT, ACT, GMAT, teacher certification, nursing entrance, ASVAB, Accuplacer, ALEX exam, you you can see CLEP exam. There's a lot of specialty um, exams out that are very critical for people's goals. Okay, for example, if you're a teacher and you can't pass your teacher certification exam, then you're not going to become a teacher, right? Well, I should have reversed how I said that. You want to become a teacher, but you got to pass that certification exam, which oftentimes there's a math component too. So you don't have to be taking a math class to need math help. So if you are in this category, check out my course catalog. If I don't have the test that you're taking, drop me a line and I'll give you my best advice. I also work with a lot with independent learners like homeschoolers. I have an excellent homeschool learning program, so you can check that out as well. And obviously, I work with those who are struggling in their current courses. So if you're taking algebra and you're just not, it's not working for you, whatever, maybe you're having a difficult time understanding your teacher. I know a lot of people say, my teacher is a terrible teacher. I don't like to kind of use that. I don't think in those terms. Now, are there bad teachers? Of course, there's bad everything in life. But oftentimes, what you need is a different, maybe, approach to learning. Okay, so you want to connect with someone who can teach you in a clear and understandable way, and hopefully that is me. Now, one thing that you can do for yourself, and you must do to help yourself, is take great math notes. Okay, over decades of teaching mathematics, this is the kind of like a law of the universe for me. Those students who take great math notes almost always end up with great math grades. And the reverse is true. Those students who just not, they're not into taking notes. They're like, yeah, why should I take notes? Well, my best friend takes all my notes for me. Or I like to use math class as my time to do my homework for science, etc., etc. Listen, I was a student at one time. I know, no one's perfect, but here's the deal. If you cannot focus, okay, on what the teacher is teaching, then you're not going to be able to learn math. Okay, you're going to end up with a sad face at the end of the year, and you're going to be asking, "What happened?" Well, where's your notes? Were you engaged? There's so much information coming at you that you have to engage in activity that's going to almost kind of guarantee your focus, and that is note taking. All right, so the better you are at focusing, right, the better off everything's going to be. So what I'm going to try to do is turn your sad faces into happy faces, and we don't want to have any question marks. We want to be knowing what the teacher's teaching, the topics, and be ready for our test, quizzes, etc. So we end up with nice A pluses and 100% at the end of the year. But listen, in the meantime, you need something to study from if your notes aren't where they need to be. So I offer detailed comprehensive math notes to include pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, and trigonometry. You can find the links to those notes in the description of this video. Okay, so here we go. So we got the square root of 20, and we're talking about this kind of concept of simplifying things. So like this particular fraction, we can simplify as 1/2. In mathematics, we want to fully simplify expressions, numeric expressions, variable expressions, etc. So taking the square root of 20 is not, we're not talking about going into your calculator and, finding the square root of 20. Of course, you need to know how to do that. We're talking about something different. So let's go down here and talk about how to simplify the square root of 20. Now, this is just a basic example problem. I'll give you a few more practice problems here in a second. But effectively, in order to simplify this, we need to know something about the properties of square roots. Okay, so here's kind of the deal. If we can break up this number or what any value, okay, that's underneath this square root in terms of its factors, then we could do something unique here. So let's just talk about the factors of 20. Okay, so we can write 20 as what? Well, you could write it as 2 times 10. We can also write it as the square root of, here, let me write this a little bit neater, the square root of 4 times 5. Okay, so these are ways that we could write 20 in terms of its factors. Okay, remember a factor is two or more things that such that we multiply. These guys are factors, right? And then the product of these factors would be this number. So in mathematics, you got to know these terms, right? So factors, factorings, product, all that, factoring, not factorings, factoring, all these terms mean something. Okay, so here's the thing. If we have a value, we can do something. There's a property of square roots that allows us to break up the factors into individual square roots. So, for example, okay, the square root of 20 I can write as the square root of 2 times 10 or the square root of 4 times 5. So what we can do is we can kind of separate these factors into their own little individual square roots. So we can write this way. Square root of 2 times the square root of 10, okay, or over here, I could write this as the square root of 4 times the square root of 5. Okay, so both of these here are equivalent to the square root of 20. All right, so there's another property that states that if we have two or more square roots, okay, if we're multiplying, we can multiply the numbers underneath the square roots, and then we can just write it this way as well. So you need to know you can write factors individually, or you could, if we have a multiplication problem, you can kind of see how this is going to work, right? So we have the square root of 4 times the square root of 5, so we can multiply the numbers underneath the square root. So both of these here are equivalent ways to write the square root of 20. Now, here is where things get interesting. So you're saying, well, we're still trying to simplify this. Well, let's talk about what it means to simplify. So when we're talking about simplifying square roots, we're interested in things called perfect squares. Perfect. Did I spell that right? Perfect. Yes, I believe so. Squares. So what are perfect squares? Squares, all right? So look at that. That's why I teach math, because I'm terrible at spelling. Okay, so perfect squares are numbers that we could take the square root of and are nice whole number answers. So, well, everyone kind of recognizes these. I'm going to write a few here. So we have 4, we have 9, we have 16, we have 25. These are perfect squares. Why? Because when we take the square root of these guys, or these numbers here, we get what? The square root of 4 is 2, the square root of 9 is 3, square root of 16 is 4, square root of 25 is 5. So these numbers here we describe as perfect squares. Now technically, it's not even a technicality, it's something that's in the set of real numbers, the square root of 4 is really plus or minus 2, okay? Or in the square root of 9 is really plus or minus 3, and a square root of 16 plus minus 4, square root of 25 plus minus 5. So you got to make sure you understand that as well, okay? But what I want you to understand is this term, perfect squares. So we want to be on the lookout for perfect squares. We want to be looking for these guys. So if we can find perfect squares as factors, then we want to focus on the factors that have perfect squares. Now, sometimes you're not going to find perfect squares, but let's take a look at both of these options, right? So I could break up the square root of 20 this way or this way. So which one would I want to pursue? Well, here you're like, hey, look at over here, Mr. Teacher. There's a perfect square. And I'm like, yes, you are right. You are doing awesome today. We'll give you a happy face and a few stars. But so we want to focus in on this setup because we have a nice perfect square here. Here, the square root of 2 times the square root of 10, that is equal to the square root of 20, but yeah, this isn't going to help us out. But if we explore this setup, well, then we can simplify this, right? And that's what this is all about. So let's go down here. And now we could say, okay, the square root of 4 is plus or minus 2. Okay. And I'm just going to write it as a positive answer right now just to make this super simple. So let's call that 2. So that's going to be square root of 4 is the same thing as 2, but we're going to multiply it by the square root of 5. And that is equivalent to the square root of 20. Okay, that is the answer. All right. So this is what I'm talking about. You need to know how to simplify square roots expressions into their simplest form. Okay, and you're not going to be able to add or subtract expressions with square roots unless you know how to do this. This is like not a trivial or not like an optional thing. Okay, you have to know how to do this in order to do a lot of problems when you're studying square roots and radicals. Okay, let's give you a couple quick little practice problems here. Let's call this number 1. Let's have you simplify the square root of 8, and then we'll have you simplify the square root of 50. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video if you want to kind of play along with me here and do these problems. Okay, so hopefully you pause the video and you just whipped up your answers and you're like, okay, I know how to do this. Let's go ahead and get into the problem. So the square root of 8. All right, I want to break this up in factors, but I'm thinking perfect squares. I'm thinking perfect squares. And you know these numbers, 4, 9, 16, 25, they just keep going, right? 36. We're looking for factors, of all these numbers. So you're like, oh yeah, 8. That is going to be 4 times 2, and that would be the perfect factors to do this. Of course, you can say this is 2 times 2 times 2. And you know what? Let's just do this real quick. 2 times 2 times 2 is the square root of 8. You could technically write this way, okay? But is this going to help us? No, okay? Because, square root of 2 is an irrational number. It's not a perfect square, so that's not going to help us. So this is a super easy problem here. So we can go ahead and write the square root of 8 as the square root of 4 times 2, okay? And we're really interested in this 4 because that's a perfect square. So now we'll break up these guys. The square root of 4 times the square root of 2. You're like, awesome, I got this perfect square right there. Square root of 4 is 2, so the square root of 8 is equal to, we'll write our answer down here, 2 times the square root of 2. Okay, so if you got that right, definitely give yourself a nice check mark and a smiley face. And we will give you an A+. We'll just give you a smiley face, maybe 1 star. Okay, that was a real easy problem, but you're definitely, on the right track. Okay, so let's go on to this last problem here. Of course, you want to continue to practice this. See, I'm giving you real easy problems, but if you understand the basic stuff, then you're going to do the more challenging stuff later. All right, so the square root of 50. Again, we're thinking, all right, how can I write this? Well, you could write this as 5 times 10. That might be some factors that initially, you might think of. But for some of you out there, you're saying, well, 25, can we use 25? Yes, we would want to use 25, okay? So 50 is the same thing as 2 times 25, okay? So these are the factors that you want to use because this is the perfect square we're trying to get at. So this is going to be the same as the square root of 2 times the square root of 25. Now I want to show you something here. how this works. So the square root of 2 is obviously the square root of 2. Square root of 25 is 5. So we simplified it, but in algebra, we always take this number, okay, we always write it in front of a radical, right? So when we're dealing with multiplication of radicals, when you have a whole number or an integer, you put that in front of the radical. So we leave our final answer this way, 5 square root of 2. And if you got that right, now definitely give yourself a check mark. Yeah, maybe 3 or 4 stars, whatever it takes to make you feel happy about doing this. You're like, yes, I'm awesome. Algebra is fun. And again, as I stated, this is a must-know skill. You need to know how to deal with square roots. And this is kind of the introduction basics of it, but that's how mathematics works. It's like climbing stairs, like so, all right? Let's get you to understand the basic stuff. Practice that really, really good. It's like practice going up the stairs like this, like this. Then you can build up your skills. Math builds upon itself. That's why it's impossible to do well in mathematics if you're not focused. Whoops, oh boy, I didn't want to scratch that out. I wanted to use my highlighter. If you're not focused, you can't be like learning math sometimes and then, you're in and out of it, in and out of it. And then people wonder, why they end up with these sad faces at the end of the year. Okay, you got to be honest with yourself, right? Like, if you're not, getting the grades that you want or things aren't going as well as they are, don't be impulsive. Like a lot of students will be like, my teacher's terrible and da 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 da. Listen, that might be partially the case, okay, but you also have to put in the work. And today, with the technology that's out there, if you're like, hey, I wish you were my math teacher, right? I would wish you, I'm glad to be your math student, even if it's just for this particular, have you as my math student, even if it's just for this one video. If I'm teaching in a way that you like and understand, then awesome. I have hundreds and hundreds of videos on my channel. And by the way, if you like this video, please consider smashing the like button and please consider subscribing. So find someone that, you can learn from. All right. If it's me, that's awesome. All right. But if it's not me, find another teacher. Okay. Get that extra help. Now, you have to drive the solution when you are talking about mathematics. But one thing is for sure. All right, you got to take outstanding notes, right? Just believe me on this one. Okay, so again, if you want to check out my Math Help program, you know where to find the link. It's going to be in the description of this video. But with that being said, I definitely wish you all the best in your mathematics adventures. Thank you for your time and have a great day.